Okay, good evening, everyone. We are on day 14, so we're coming up to halfway through the secrets of prosperity. It's a good secret for today, but we'll say that the secret's a secret for right now. So let's begin with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Teshwar, Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, beloved Swamiji, we humbly bow before you all. Divine Mother, help us to always attune our will to thy divine will. We will reason, we will act. I knew I was supposed to be doing something else. Let's start that sentence over because it would not be good to forget the will. That's the whole subject for tonight. We will reason, we will, and we will act. But guide thou our reason, will, and activity to the highest good for all. Help us to be receptive to your guidance, such that all that we do expresses your wisdom and your love. Om Shanti. Amen.
With my Today my mind has dived deep in thee. If I find not, I will not blame thy sea. I will find fault with my diving. I will find fault with my diving. Today my mind has dived deep in thee. Today my mind has dived deep in thee. Today my mind has dived deep in thee.
Let's meditate together now for a few minutes, taking just that line from this chant, although every line's very meaningful. But let's listen to that. Today my mind has dived deep in thee. Let's use that as an affirmation and a direction. We will dive deep. We will. Shalom. Peace. Amen. The secret of prosperity. Swamiji doesn't always repeat that, but that's really what we're talking about. It's a very meaningful, of course they all are, but this one I think it's one that we can think about how to bring into everyday life, all of us actually. The secret says, the secret of prosperity is holding positive expectations supported by dynamic will. And that really is the operative phrase here. It's not just positive expectations, because that's easy enough. But what does that mean to talk about dynamic will? And it's very important on our path. Actually, this is, you know how I always say these secrets, they're one line or two lines. And very often, even in the secrets of prosperity, if you go to, at least many of you have spent time in what's called the Ananda library. So you can put a word in and search where in all of our teachings does that word come up. And very often in these secrets, it was particularly true with secrets of emotional healing, because you could put depression, greed, anxiety, whatever they were. I mean, there were 30 of them, of course. There was nothing. You just didn't find Master Swamiji talking a lot about almost any of it, at least not in a way that we could search for it then. I say then because now we're supported a little more with the AI in there, but that has its limits too. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is that if you plug in the words dynamic will in the library, a huge number of articles come up. But maybe most importantly, a lot of talks of masters, particularly from his precepta lessons, come up. How important he felt this well. It's the essence of almost everything that we do, whatever we're doing, that we're bringing dynamic will to it. And in our language, I mean, just again to give the end first, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. Dynamic will really means attuning our will to the will of God, because that's where the dynamic, powerful, perfectly directed will is. It's like when Jesus said, "Thy will be done." I mean, what was he talking about? He was talking about how can we attune ourselves so perfectly to you that everything we're doing, we feel your will coming in and supporting us, or we don't do it. And that's the most important part of this. How do we separate the ego's desire and our own will from the will of God? And we all know, everybody who's here tonight, and I presume those of you watching online, because if you're interested enough to be here, we're clear enough to know it's very tricky. It is so hard to get perfectly clear that what you're doing is actually coming from God and from His will. And I've repeated this many times over the years, but in several talks, not that I could tell you which ones right now, but it comes up not uncommonly when I'm listening to Swamiji speak, where he will say that this is one of the hardest things on the spiritual path. It is so tricky to know that what you're hearing is God's will, God's direction, because the ego is so powerful here. And I shouldn't even say ego, but, for those of you who remember what the id is, ego, id, superconscious, not in spiritual talk, but in psychology talk, the id says, I want what I want when I want it. And it's this is if you're studying psychology, that's what you would be studying, but it drives all of us. It has all of the power of ego behind it. So to get that clear, and Master says over and over, and I never like looking through these notes to see if I can find his exact words because it's distracting. But at some point in all of what I copied and pasted and wrote from the library and my own comments here, but Master's comment at one point where he says very clearly, the only way there is through meditation, the only way. And of course, it just makes perfect sense because only in that clear, perfect clarity that comes with a deep meditation, only then, and we can get back into the same problem here, because are we having a perfectly clear meditation? It always comes back to that. And it behooves us to ask that question a lot, because otherwise we can take, and we do take, we've all taken so many long detours, very long detours, really thinking that we're doing the right thing. I shouldn't say often, I do it less now, but I still do it, and I've done it much more in this life. I'll look back with a very clear memory of what I was thinking when I made certain decisions, and some of the comments that I've made. I so wish I could rewind 77 years and hit delete, because when I look back, I think I said that with so much assurance. I was so sure that it was right and that it was wise and that it was intuitive, and with hindsight, which we've been told is always 20/20, you can see, no, that wasn't actually God speaking. That was Shanti speaking. And there are moments when it's embarrassing. Many moments. I just don't share all the moments. If I shared them, I'd be really embarrassed. But many of you have often heard me say, sometimes I think I should go back maybe a year at the most and just take everything I taught before then off of the internet, because I'm not going to watch it all. But I think, was I clear enough? But then I know that a year from now I might feel that way about right now too. It's just, you're only clear when you're clear. You only can have that degree of clarity in just moments of this life. And that's the way it's meant to be. It's not, if any of us were living with perfect clarity all the time, we wouldn't need this, not just this body, but we wouldn't need the ego that is inherent in the body. And it's very important to state, this has come up so much for me in this past week in counseling moments with different people about how hard some of what we go through in life is. And it is. But then I just say, that's what life is. It's like lifting weights all the time. And if I were to walk around doing bicep curls with 2-pound weights, I have to say 2 pounds for me, because anything more than that actually becomes a weight. But I just wouldn't build any of the muscle that I would be looking for. On the other hand, if I put 10 pounds in my hand and it's hard and it starts burning after a while and you want to quit, but you say 5 more reps or whatever you say, you get strong. So there is a reason for this incarnation. There's a reason for the ego. There's a reason for the pain. And even Master says, find those moments of failure. He says it in here when you're talking about developing dynamic willpower, because that's what we're talking about right now. Moments of failure, and if I come across this exact phrase again later, I'll read it. But we've probably all read these lines, but he says the most fertile ground for making spiritual progress. In the moments, if we have the courage to look at ourselves in those moments of failure, any kind of failure, whatever it is, and instead of going down with it, find that energy that it takes to raise ourselves up, face it, and determine to do better. He says here, success in life does not depend only upon natural ability. It also depends upon your determination to grasp the opportunity that is presented to you. And that is just so important. We all have, every one of us has been given this perfect opportunity. The truth is, we can all tune into the divine will. Every one of us could. But very often, we don't want to. We get afraid. And Master also says one of the greatest enemies of willpower is fear. And it's really true. Our fear gets us, and it can be fear of many things. Not just fear of failure, but fear of being seen, fear of having to look at truth in ourselves. Fear is paralyzing, honestly, in most instances. So we just quickly change routes, and we go a different way. And it happens just like that. We're not conscious of it, or we wouldn't do it. I'm pretty sure that's why this chant came to mind on the way over here, because it's a very powerful line to say, if I find not, I will not blame the sea. It's meaning I'm not going to say, oh, there's no pearls in the sea. That's just never true. I will find fault with my diving, it says. Let me turn around, look inside, say, wait a minute, how can I do this better? Because the sea, which of course in this instance means God's consciousness, super consciousness, is filled with pearls. That's what it is. So if we're not finding them, if we're not finding true happiness, inner peace, calmness, contentment, then the best thing we can do is say to ourselves, I won't waste a minute looking outside of myself. Let me ask myself, not with judgment, not with harshness, but let me ask myself, how can I do this differently or better? How can I develop my own willpower, not my own, but my ability to tune into God's willpower? Master says, this is very interesting. He says, along with positive thinking, which he talks about a lot, you must use willpower and continuous activity in order to be successful. Everything that you see is a result of will. And he repeats that over and over. Everything that we see in the world, every action, he goes through it. And he says, even when you lift your arm or you reach for something, he's showing us everything involves willpower. So how are we going to dive deep and find it? I feel it is incredibly easy for all of us, unknowingly, to let our energy drop. It's shockingly easy to get lazy. I know it doesn't sound right, but it's really true. When I went on this seclusion that you've all heard me talk about now a lot, but it was powerful. And I think the lessons, it's like when Dunbar has said to me years and years ago, anytime any one of us goes on seclusion, we all can go on seclusion. Meaning we share with each other in that level. I never felt what was happening for me was happening just for me. It was happening for all of us. I felt that deeply. But I said to myself, it was 12 days. That is not a lot of time. So when I got in the car and I was driving away from the community, I said, right now, you start right now. Every time you feel your mind going away from God, never mind laziness, every time you just keep bringing it back and back. That is your exercise for this time. How much sleep do you need? Are you going to watch even one other movie that doesn't have to do with God? Because I always say to myself, you all have whatever this is in you. I never have time to watch movies. I often don't even see one movie a year. I listen to people, and they're making all these lists throughout Ananda. Here's a great movie, here's a great movie. Honestly, and I'm thinking, how can that be? When are they watching all of these movies? I'm not kidding. I rarely watch a movie. I often say, I'll even write to Lakshmi, send me the names of a few good movies. I don't think I've ever watched one of them, and I trust her. So it would be very easy with 12 days off to say, now I'm going to catch up on my movies. Now I'm going to sleep a lot because I don't get this. Now, whatever it is, I'm going to eat whatever I want. I'm going to do this. But I just determined not to do those things. And the reward was so great, so much greater than watching what would probably be some very great movie. I think I did watch one movie, but I can't remember now what it was. I'm looking at Lakshmi because I think I told her I watched one, but I don't remember what. But anyway, whatever it was, the point is that it's not that there's anything wrong with watching a movie. That's not the point. It's not that there's anything wrong with sleeping a little later or eating, I don't know, a dessert every day if you want. The point, it's not there. It's what's the price tag on all of those things? What could we be doing instead? How could we be developing greater self-control, attuning ourselves to that dynamic willpower that is the power of God? Master says these three things. He says, you must be sure. He repeats this. It's written in these few pages of notes 5 times at least. You must be sure, he's talking about conscious will, that your willpower is used constructively, not for harmful purposes, of course, or trifling things. Always be sure that what you want is right for you to have. Again, easier said than done, but he's telling us. Then use all the force of your willpower to accomplish your object, always keeping your mind on God, the source of all. And he says, not here, just want to read again what I read. He says, do everything that you can do to make sure that what you're going after is good for you spiritually, that you feel the upliftment in it. It has to be for the greater good. This is a thing about the way people, what we pray and what we're praying for, and why people very often who are not as, what is the right word? Maybe they're not as deeply attuned to spiritual principles. I'll just say it that way. Good people. I hear it all the time in these Q&As that we do. People praying for things that they want or that they think is right, those prayers have no power because they haven't checked in and made sure that they are for our own and others' highest good. But when Master's talking about how to tune into and use divine will, this is what he's talking about. He says, will is the power that moves the cosmos and everything in it. Divine will has no boundaries. It works in all bodies, in all things. It's very powerful. It can change the course of destiny. We all know this. Wake the dead and change the orbits of the planets. These are, it's impressive. I love how he says that. This is the power. This is what divine will can do. This is what we have access. He says you only need to know that you already possess it and that the image of God is within you. But to know, it's a very powerful statement, not just a light little statement, to say that all of what we think about as divine will, we already have. So when we read this secret, that prosperity is holding positive expectations supported by dynamic will, this is what he's talking about, that we all have the ability to tune into God at any point and bring this divine will into our positive expectations, because without that will behind it, nothing will work. Nothing. I just want to skip this part right here, too. Just see where I want to go here. I'm reading things to you that he said, and then, because these are Master's words. Carrying a thought. Oh, no, I'll start back here. To create dynamic willpower. This is very interesting to me. Determined to do some of the things in life that you thought you could not do, which is an interesting place to start. Attempt simple tasks first. Then, as your confidence strengthens and your will becomes more dynamic, you can undertake more difficult things. So he says, start with something that you thought you couldn't do, start doing it, and he goes on to say it's not right here. Don't give up until you accomplish it. Stay with it. The staying with it is part of how we develop. I'm just glancing here to see if I can find his words, but they're not right here. He said, I've just given you 3 important rules in making your willpower dynamic. Master says, here are the 3 rules. Choose a simple task that you've never mastered and determined to succeed with it. These are his rules. Be sure you've chosen something constructive and feasible, then refuse to consider failure. It's beautiful, actually. Concentrate on a single purpose using all abilities and opportunities to forward it. So it's just the way we talk about affirmation, not that this is affirmation, but we use affirmations to strengthen something within ourselves all the time. And we believe that because words and thoughts have energy, and we are dynamically bringing the power of that energy up. That's what we're doing with affirmations. And he's saying, let's do that to strengthen and make our willpower dynamic. It's not our will, but God's will, and he's telling us to do that. He then says that he then goes on to talk about the value of meditation in developing dynamic will. Now again, we think we know this. Of course we know it. That's why we're all meditating every day, or at least trying to meditate every day. But to hear him say it within this context, and he says, when you're calm and you're attuned to constructive vibrations, he said, then you can use your mental faculty, your mental microphone, he calls it, but it doesn't matter, to reach God. The right method of meditation is the only satisfactory way. He makes absolutely no bones about it here, that meditation is the only way to attune ourselves to God's will, which is the only way to make our will dynamic. So usually we can skirt around it. We can talk about other, we can talk about energization. We can talk about chanting. We can talk about many things. But he just repeatedly, in all of these articles, says that. He says, all men and women of success have devoted much time to deep concentration and meditation, even if they've never used that word, meditation. And it really reminded me of that book that we've spoken about so often, Conversations with Great Composers. Because all of those composers, Beethoven, Brahms was, thank you. Beethoven and Brahms particularly in that book. And I love these opening chapters in that book because they all say that they never wrote a note of music, that they heard it. They just had to stop and tune into it. Now, these are the great composers of all times in many ways, but they weren't saying, I meditated. In fact, all of them were actually very Christian. I don't even know what we would have called them because they were so tuned in. They knew when they would be having regular discussions with each other, they would be quoting passages from the Bible. I mean, it's all written there. The author, Abel is his name, was writing it down, what they were saying when he was interviewing them. Obviously, however long ago it was now, 100 years ago. I forget when he first did those interviews, but he promised Brahms that he wouldn't publish it until 50 years after he died. I love that because you ask yourself why, and it just shows this is so strong to us when we're talking about meditation, God's will, listening, putting that out, having the power of God behind us in what we do. And I've always felt that Brahms was saying, I don't want to be anywhere near this when people start questioning it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to be influenced by it. This is why Master said to us, and I've been giving great thought, and tuning in, asking Master, what do I share about those 2 weeks of seclusion? What do I share? Because as soon as you put it out, it's open for discussion. So my friend Donna, who many of you have heard me talk about a lot, who's my sister, who I love, I had lunch with her yesterday, she says, so tell me all about your seclusion. And I said to her, sweetie, there are no words. I can't share it with you. Not because I wouldn't, but I can't. They would just be words to you, and I refuse to do that. And she just sat there. So I said, that's the end. I guess I could say it was a really beautiful 2 weeks of loving God and feeling loved by God. That was it. But even that, what does that mean? It could mean a lot to each of you, but you have to be so careful what you put out because it interrupts this. It's another reason why Master's saying, just in meditation, just between you and him. Really, just there. Because otherwise, it's like leaking energy in a way. It's just like leaking energy. And even amongst us, we need to be careful. He told us, don't share your deepest experiences. He said this to Swamiji. I mean, that's how we know it. He said it to the monks. And, of course, we're all tempted to, but we can't. There's no way, because it's all just beyond words. It's not analytical, it's experiential. And that's just where it has to stay. The moments that we're in love. And I told Donna this. I've told this story. In fact, it came up recently, or I'm having a deja vu. So some of you might have heard it on Thursday night. I don't know, but I've told it in the past anyway. Donna, this is decades ago. I mean, we were probably in our 20s, maybe, 20s probably. She went down to Florida, and she was vacationing, and she was on the west coast of Florida. It's very pretty, and it's less busy than the East Coast, Miami, and all of that. And she came back, and she said to me, did I just tell this story? Okay, I did, right? Lakshmi shaking her head. Yes, maybe I only told it to you. She's shaking, and Donna came back, and she said, oh, my God, Shanti, as soon as you can, you have got to go to this city. I forget what it is. But again, remember now, this is 45 to 50 years ago, probably 50. So Florida was not as developed then as it is now. The West Coast was particularly not developed. So it's very reasonable that she said to me, go to this place. It is fabulous. You will love it. Just like this. So next time I went to Florida, we were on the East Coast, so we often went to Florida for spring breaks, whatever, because it was warm and beachy, sandy. I go down there, and I go right to this city, and I won't call it a dump, but it was close. I'm looking around, and I'm thinking, what was she talking about? I mean, really, I could not imagine what she saw in this place. So when I went home, and I said to her, what happened to you when you were there? She was thinking, she goes, oh, that's when I met, the man's name happens to have been David, because I just spoke to her about this story, because I said to her, these are the things that happen when you think you're falling in love, when you're in your heart, because I wanted to not just be rude to her, but show her this is what happens when you connect with the divine. It's beyond words, and it doesn't hold anything really for anybody else. You thought that was the most gorgeous place in the world. There was nothing gorgeous about it, nothing, but you fell in love there. So those times with God that are of the heart, sometimes they need to stay there. And the story in there, Stephen's remembering the whole thing because he's shaking his head a lot, but somebody once complained to Beethoven about one of his piano concertos. Apparently, it was notoriously difficult to play. Most pianists, even great pianists, found it impossible. And Beethoven, who was known to be grumpy and strong and frequently would yell at people. I mean, he was known for that. And somebody said to him, can't you change this or that? And he said, when I wrote those notes, they were coming from God himself. Do you think I care how hard it is for you to play? Just like that. I mean, because that's what was happening. That was the power of the will of God. That was tuning in meditation, even though Beethoven never said he meditated. But when Master says that is the only way. So we're not talking about Master's music or Swamiji's music, but still some of the most inspired music and inspired art. I mean, when you think about it, it's not, there's no art in my home now that doesn't have to do with Master or Swamiji or something deeply and clearly spiritual. There's nothing else up. But there are some beautiful works of art. I can appreciate them from the past many centuries. Well, those people were not having a logical thought, I'll put a line here, I'll do this. They stopped and they let inspiration flow. And I think Master is saying to us very clearly here that there's no other way to do this. And he says, even though they didn't use the word meditation to describe what was happening to them, they were people who could dive deeply and come out with the pearls of right solutions. I love that just because we just listened to that. I didn't know that was there, but anyway. We're talking about pearls today. He says, tune yourself with cosmic power, then you will possess the creative power of spirit. You will be in contact with infinite intelligence, which can guide you and solve all problems. Power from the dynamic source of your being will flow through you so that you will be creative in the world of business, of thought, and in the world of wisdom. I think that's just beautiful. So he's saying to us, the only way, he says it over and over, to develop what Swamiji says is how we're going to feel prosperous. So it's not just by holding positive expectations. That's a start. That is a start. Choosing to be positive, just like choosing to be happy, which is mentioned elsewhere here, of course it would be, is important. But none of it will go anywhere without dynamic will. So it's relatively early, but I'm going to stop here for a few minutes and just see if anybody has any comments. Or stories, questions, anything. Stephen.
Hello. Yes?
There it is.
Good. You know, I've been going through a period of self-reflection. And I've been dealing with this very idea because I've been cleaning up some things that I did along the way, sort of related to my business and finances over, I don't know, let's say the last 5 years. But it's all about will and these decisions that I made. It's just along these lines. Decisions that I made thinking they were very positive, that this was a good direction, and I was being expansive and all that, can come with that. Put a lot of energy into it, because when I direct my will, there's a lot of energy behind it. And interestingly, I made one major decision, and everything else followed because I made it so important, that particular thing, that for the last 5 years at least, everything I've done business-wise has been oriented towards that achievement, which, it's like, in other words, I set it up and I needed to take 20 steps to get there, so I needed to make all these decisions in order to do that. Well, it turns out that was not a wise thing to be going for, and it was not attainable, and it just became messy. Not horrible, not, catastrophic, but messy. And I've spent the last, few months just extricating myself from all of it, which is now done.
Good for you.
I'm happy to say. And it's very interesting because it feels a lot cleaner, of course, but lighter. But what it's done, it's like I had things all in line. Now I have to think for myself because it was all directed. Previously, I'd set it up in such a way that there was not a problem. Now it's completely open book. But this is life. I mean, this is what it's like, okay, it doesn't matter how old you are. In fact, older the better, in the sense that presumably you develop some wisdom, but it's freed up a ton of energy. But the energy is not yet directed. Right. So I am working in the aftermath of my meditations in the morning now, to find a way to know God's will in a more accurate way. Let's put it that way.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, I so deeply appreciate your sharing that, because to me, it brings us right to the essence of what a big part of what we're talking about here today. And it's just a huge error that we make as we go as human beings. And I've said many times, here we are planted in the middle of Silicon Valley, right near Stanford University, amongst some of the smartest minds in the world. Literally, that's true. And it is very hard to talk about what it means to get out of your mind and to mean that. And whether, I can't tell you, I mean, I always say this, I look around the room and because I feel so connected with so many people in this community. And I know your stories. And so I could make this story about anything. I try and stick and talk to myself. But if somebody else shares like that, I mean, it's beautiful. Twice in my life, where I started to get it right, and I'd like to share it using that as a jumping off point, because I've made so many decisions in my life like that. And for years, you have the goal. The goal's not bad. It looks good. It's easy to believe in that. Whatever the accomplishment is, the problem is it was our decision and our will. And that willingness to sit still long enough to hear what's supposed to happen, this is very hard. And it takes a lot of faith and courage. It just does. And I remember when I left, I'm just going to share two stories because I'm telling not on myself now bad stories. I could, believe me. I have a list of them. Not bad, but like that. I made a decision, I'm going to go there. I mean, I have a couple of marriages that look like that. It's just, but these are, and I think it's important here when we get it right. And when you said sitting in the aftermath of my meditations, I just felt so good that you said that. When I left Baltimore, where I had this wildly successful medical practice and social life and looked to the world like relationship. I mean, I was a figure there. It's so weird to say these things, but my picture was up on billboards all over Baltimore. I'm not kidding. As like, this is the doctor you want to see. Look at her. And I was much younger, and I looked different than I look now, so it was a pretty picture. And nobody could understand why I was leaving. And I knew I had to get out of there. I was at a place where I literally felt like if I stay here, I am going to die. And I meant that. And I think I've mentioned to you, I had already discovered that Baltimore had, at that time, a very high incidence of cancers in younger people, 20s, 30s, 40s. I couldn't believe how much cancer I was finding. And whatever that was about doesn't really matter. But I said, something will happen to you. You do not belong here anymore. I was there for 5 years, at that point, maybe 6. And I left. But my leaving caused such an uproar. Nobody could believe that I was leaving. Why are you doing this? It's a big mistake. Don't you want to talk it through with somebody? You have everything here. What people really mean by that is you have everything I think I'd want, right? But what terrified them is that they would always, I had 6,000 patients. So when I say they, I mean, plus colleagues, everybody. But what are you going to do? What will you do? Where are you going? What will you do? I heard it for 6 months as I was unwinding, and I had to keep saying, I don't know. All I know is that I want to go somewhere and get quiet enough that I can hear the answer and not decide it. And it was an inspiration, and it was true, and it would be true for all of us. Not that we can all do it the way I did. We shouldn't. It's not everybody's journey. I lived out of my car for a year, literally. I was 50-some years old, and I was living out of my car, traveling around the world, even without a cooler in my car. I was eating bread and cheese and instant soups. I actually mean it. Very seldom saw people. And I finally heard. And it was then that I came back. I moved into the community. I mean, a lot happened. But I could have easily, at any point there, decided what to do. It's so natural. If you're pretty bright and if you have options, and all of us. But it takes much, much, much more courage to say, wait a minute, I just did something like that. Because that's what got me to Baltimore, which was not a right turn in my life necessarily. It was a complicated turn. I decided to go to Baltimore. I was driven for many reasons. God wasn't telling me to go to Baltimore. Shanti was telling me. Then I decided to listen. And I really feel so when you say in the aftermath of meditation, right in those minutes, right then, to say, okay, I'm here. I'm receptive right now. This is a moment you could speak to me. I could hear because I'm attuned. And we get tested. How long are you willing to sit and listen? You know, how much fear? That's why Master says in here, fear is what keeps us away from, I forget what his, but he said fear is the biggest detriment to tuning into dynamic will, because it's terrifying. The answer's not coming, the answer's not coming, you know? That's what just happened because I've known that I need to change my life right now. I've known this for some time. And I want to tell you that so many people have been talking to me for about 3 years at least. You do too much. You work too hard. You're too old for this. You shouldn't be doing this. When are you going to slow down? When will you retire? I hear it every day from many people. And I kept saying to myself, they're right in a way. It doesn't feel like what it used to feel. But I don't want to make this decision. I didn't. I just felt and I'm saying this because it's a good example. I knew if I made the decision, I would get it wrong. The decision's complex. I'm a big part of this community. I'm a big part of Ananda worldwide. If I just made decisions, there's a lot of ways it could go wrong for a lot of people. I knew that. So for years now, feeling I don't belong here, not belong here, I'm not going away, but in the role, in the way, all of what I've been doing, the numbers of emails, texts, phone calls, appointments, I mean, it's ridiculous, actually, for a 77-year-old woman, honestly. It's not the time in life for that. I can do it. I can go to India and spend a month, come back, then go to Australia and spend a month. Yeah, but like, why? It's not the time in life to do that. But I didn't want to make the decision. And that, I think, is where the essence of this teaching is, can we wait? So I just said to God, I'm taking 12 days. It's all we have. So you better come quickly. I need to hear you. What do I do now? How do I do it? And when we're determined, I mean, it happens. directions come, guidance comes, then you know you're acting with that dynamic will of God. And I bet everybody's had it here. You know it's so different. It's just so empowering in all of the right ways. This being that is in this body, that therefore has created an ego, because the soul was identified with this body this time. She's not wise enough. She can't see anything. We can't even see one past life. Never mind 10 million. Really, never mind. I mean, when you think of it, it's so crazy that we try and make decisions. So, I mean, really, when you think of it that way. So when Swamiji says, I always forget the words, and I want his words. I can't remember the words of this is enough of a sign that I need to quit doing much of what I'm doing. Holding positive expectations, but supported by dynamic will. It's not that I would not keep serving. Of course I'm going to keep serving. How do you want me to serve now? What's meant to happen now in this moment? And it's tough. Even today, all of the managers, 3 of them and me, we went out for lunch. And we were talking about Master's birthday, which is coming. Well, because we're making schedules, it feels like it's soon. It's not until January 5th, of course, but today it felt like it was next week. And last year, I just happened to do this, but I actually rewrote the program for the first time. In years, we did Master's birthday differently. We had always done it the same. We did it differently. I can't tell you how many people wrote and said, that was wonderful. I mean, really, a lot of people. Even I got notes last year. We all probably got them because nobody knew who did the program. It just so happened that one came through me. But from David and Asha, plus dozens of other people. So today we're talking about it, and it happens to fall on a Sunday in 2025. So we're thinking of incorporating it to Sunday service. Long story. So there's a discussion about how to do it. And Sai Ganesh is saying, I find it distracting and this and that when so many, because there were many different little talks around each vow. And I was so attached to it. I want it to happen that way again. It's a really good program that inspired people. I'm not questioning that. But when I went home later, I said, this isn't how you leave. This isn't how you give it over to them. Let them do what they want. That's what you're doing now. Quit fighting for what you believe. Quit having such a strong opinion. I know that's a great program. I also know it might not work as well when we do it as it's Sunday service now. It's not an evening, but whatever. It's hard. I'm being guided to let go of all of that, what feels like little stuff to me right now. It's not little, but for me, it's little. And yet, to let go and just swaha. You guys, you're all great. You make great decisions. Of course, do it your way. There's that place in me like, do you not understand what a great program that was? It's not easy, boy. I'll tell you these. We have to be so ready to listen, let go, listen, let go, listen, let go. Because we think we know best. We do. I mean, I'm speaking to you because you shared. It's so hard not to. And when you've done something very well for a lot of years and it's been successful, right? The congregation's thriving right now. And I've been around for a lot of that. Not the only one who's been around, but I've been around. So to me, my voice feels relevant. Then I have to remind myself every day, doesn't matter what you think, get out of the way. It's not yours anymore. Let it go. That's what you were just shown. That's what you were just shown. Love God. Your job right now is not to be planning all these programs, deciding what's best, this, that, the other. Let it go. Love God. You love God. It's just, you would think it'd be the easiest thing in the world, wouldn't you? Not. But, I'm sorry, but James is, I don't know. But, no, I don't even remember what I was going to say. It was the end of a sentence, a Jewish sentence.
I have something to add.
Very good.
Which is a little bit of a corollary to what you're saying, goes back to a story for Viveka Devi and I back in 2001. We lived, just to apply a label, a corporate life. I had a meditation practice, but I wasn't on the path. She was already a Kriyaban, teaching yoga and meditation and so on. We realized we had a very, very successful life, but using this language, it wasn't the prosperity, we weren't realizing the prosperity that we had felt was our potential. So we got out of that life. But what we realized is we had put so much energy into that life, we had to put just as much energy to get out of that life.
Very good point.
And we spent literally 12 months traveling around the world, living out of our car, maybe not eating soup and bread like you were, but literally living out of a suitcase. And we had a lot of fun, but we had to put that dynamic will to get out of that life in order to figure out what was trying to happen for this new paradigm, whatever the new paradigm was going to be.
Yeah, it's important. Thank you for saying that. It's a very good point. It takes huge energy to do, to make these spiritual advances and changes. Everything is geared in this life to pull us back and to justify it. That's another thing. How much time do we spend justifying who we are, how we are? The mistakes we've made, the ones we're just about to make, the ones we're in the midst of making, I mean, when I went home today and I saw what I had been doing, they don't care. I'll call them, I'll write them an email tonight, say, do it anyway. I'm out of it, it's fine. And they'll do a great job. I trust these souls implicitly. It's not about them. It's about me. But it's challenging, and it's just a work in progress. You just keep doing it. But every time that we go to say but, flashing red light, really, because we have it so well worked out about why we're right. And it's just all the history. That's history. It's not current events. Current events say, tune in, listen. Listen in a different way than you've ever listened. And really, that's where prosperity is. Not in the repetition or in the perfection of what was a life last year, 10 years ago, 30 years ago, 5 lifetimes ago. It's very hard. And it's scary. It's very frightening because we have it down pat how to do it. So, anyway. Yeah, I want you to, that was a good discussion you just started.
Yeah, so just in relation to that, I'm realizing too that we often in life will invest a lot. Could be energy, it could be money, resources of whatever nature, and that can keep you engaged in something far longer than is appropriate. Because of that, just simply, and I know this was my particular experience most recently, and so that's why I'm speaking of it, but, you sort of look, but I just, my God, how could that, I don't want all that to go to waste.
Right.
And it makes no difference. Zero. Like, it doesn't matter. It could have been $10 million. And it doesn't make any difference. It could have been your heart and soul for 10 years, like in your practice, however many, is more than 10 years. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
When it's time to move on, the dynamic will, or at least, our human will, to whatever extent it's aligned, That's what's needed. It's the ability to pull up stakes and not look back.
Yeah. That is, again, so important what you're saying. And it's not easy. You can just feel it, but it is essential. And when it's right, meaning it's the divine, not just will, but I forget the words, but that divine intelligence, that's the word that Master used, then you know it. I was saying, even before I went on this seclusion, this is one of those monumental moments in this life. That's why I'm speaking about it. It was 12 days in a life, you could say big deal, but it was a big deal. But it was like leaving medicine for me. Medicine was my whole life. It was such a huge identity, me being a doctor, having the practice. I did it, honestly, 14 to 18 hours a day. Sometimes every day for 9 months without a day off for decades. I loved being a doctor. And literally, I went to work one day, came to me, it's time to be done. Barry was on my back. It was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and he was freaked. And I had made 2 little mistakes the year before. I've told you all this story. I misdiagnosed a torn Achilles, and I missed a case of bed bugs. Even when the person was saying to me, do you think this could be bed bugs? Nah, it's not bed bugs, but it was bed bugs. And it spooked me, because I had not, that I know of, made a mistake before, because Master was always with me. So I was like, whoa. It really spooked me. Lakshmi and others will remember, because I was terrified that the next mistake wasn't going to be about bed bugs. So anyway, I went to work one day, and I went to Eric, who was the chief of medicine. Eric, I think it's time for me to stop. He said, when are you thinking? And I said, right now. I wrote him a letter of, he's the chief of medicine, wrote a letter of resignation, walked out, and I swear, not for a millisecond in my life did I ever look back. I never looked back. I was just fine. It was done. Practicing medicine. Not me, but the divine will. When it's right, and I love that you're saying, it could be $10 million. It doesn't matter. When it's over, it's over. And nothing here on this earthly plane makes any difference. Listen and trust, to really trust. I don't know where that's going to be for you. But that's the good news, actually. Tune in. Oh, wait. I've been watching Rita's face trying to see what's She's like this. She's not letting anything Yeah, she is. Rita, wait for the microphone. Yeah.
Steve just basically from what Steve was saying, similar. I've just been going through the last 5-7 years of my life. I was slowly, I guess just the spirituality and being involved with Ananda and I guess meditating, and life has been slowly changing. And I've been thinking on, like you say, that I had decided certain things to do, maybe with my kids or family or whatever. And then I'm just noticing that it has shifted so much in the last 5-7 years that my whole group of friends, my family, I don't know what it is. I love them. I still am very involved with them. But at the same time, I find that I'm moving away. And I don't know how to explain it, but 5 years ago it was different. And I was so invested in everything, doing things. And now I'm just where it just doesn't matter what is happening.
Yeah, God starts taking it from us, really.
Yeah.
And it's just, and when it happens, it's okay It's not like you're feeling like you're a bad mother, I'm sure, or a bad friend.
No, no.
Doesn't happen like that.
No, and even,
wonderful.
my friends are noticing and accepting it. Because initially they're like, what's wrong with you? Where have you been? Why aren't you? And now it's like, oh, okay. So,
Interesting.
In the middle of August, I decided to go at the last minute, do a seclusion for a couple of weeks. And there was a specific intention for it of letting go of some deep hurts and some things and just let it go. And so I was going to shut off all technology and blah, blah, blah. So I start to do that. I've got all the food I need. I've got everything ready to just start doing some deep meditation and get rid of these things that I didn't want to be feeling anymore. And then it occurred to me when I went to turn my cell phone off, I was using my cell phone as a 2-hour alarm because of after the surgery, I needed to put eye drops in my eye every 2 hours. So I was living in 2-hour increments all day long. And I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? And it occurred to me, what you're saying is, work on these things, on the simple things first, and the bigger things will take care of themselves. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to practice attuning into Master to have him help me know when it's time to put the eye drops in my eye. So I have to admit that I was not completely positive that I would be able to accomplish this. And I did leave my cell phone on, turn it on and off from times for the help. But what I did notice that at times when I did leave it off, when I would go to turn it on or look at a different clock to see if it was time, I was right on the money, right at exactly when I need to do it. And there's this feeling now of a variety of things. I let go of some fear about time and not worrying, which wasn't even something that was on my mind. But the intention of why I went into the seclusion, it's done. It's gone.
Great. That's a good story. But isn't it interesting? You put something like your vision on the line, and you think, how much can I trust? And that's why I always love that story of that devotee that's a good story, actually a great story. I'm really glad you shared it. But it did remind me of the devotee who came to the master in the Himalaya, you'll all remember, so high up. And he said, if I need you to be my guru, I need you to accept me as a disciple. The guru's kind of, just listening. And finally, the young man says, if you don't accept me, I'll jump off the mountain. And the master says to him, so jump. Oh, was it Babaji? Oh. Okay, I didn't know. It's funny, I've never known it was a Babaji story. Well, that's perfect. And so the kid jumped. I mean, he died. And then Babaji sent the other disciples down to get his body. But it's sort of like, where is our faith? What are we willing to put on the line? Or we were telling that story, I don't remember this, the saint who became Padmananda, right? Because his master was on the other side of this raging river, and he beckoned to him to come, and the disciple just looked at him and walked into the river. And then there was always that lotus leaf, and I think that's a true story, but I'm not really sure. But Lakshmi said to me, it came up about a month or two ago, and she said, I don't know, I'm not sure I could have walked into that river. It's like, how deep is, and I said to her, I'm not sure I could have either. A lot of faith to believe that there's a human being over there that could have you walk on water. I mean, so when your vision's on the line, like, I need these drops. We all do. Anyway, but we're on our way, yeah.
I realized something just now about intuition. And this is actually my experience today, because this morning I was asking, and, you know, it's like you'd prefer to get an answer in the moment, but it really doesn't. Occasionally it works that way, but it doesn't always work that way. But something happened today. It's so funny because you just asked me, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know, but that's actually not true, because something happened today that gave me direction. And I knew this morning that sometimes what happens is it comes later in the day. And in this particular instance, I had an interaction with a man over the phone. I'd been trying to get connected, and finally we did today and talked for quite a while. But it set something up for me and gave me very clear understanding of why I needed to do this, that, and the other. Whereas before, I'd just been floundering completely, and it's like I just realized, oh yeah, of course, this all happened like a few hours ago. But it's that. It comes in ways that you don't necessarily expect.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, maybe it comes in a flash like Brahms, but I'm remembering it can also come through other people. It can come through an interaction, it can come through an idea, and all of a sudden, your energy just gets in line because it makes intuitive sense. Yeah. And that's, to me, that's just so fascinating.
Yeah, I actually know exactly what you're talking about. You can't, it's unpredictable, you can't make it happen. But if you're listening, if you're aware, then you feel that. And and in those instances, something has just like been downloaded. It feels, so I know what you're describing. Yeah. Isn't this fun, this journey that we're on? Here we are. We're the good news. Look at us. We have each other. And so, all right.